In my work, I regularly meet with families who are trying to help someone that they care about, and they run into a wall pretty quickly. They're trying to call, get information, arrange supports, and they're told they can't. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because they're not legally set up to act on that person's behalf. My name is Brendan Story, and I'm a social worker in New Brunswick, and I run Thrive Atlantic Counseling. I work with older adults and caregivers who are dealing with the changes in memory, health, and independence, often in the middle of everything already starting to shift. I'm thinking of a family I worked with not long ago. Son has started noticing changes in his mother. Missed appointments, unopened mail, bills piling up. Nothing dramatic at first, just small things that were adding up. He tried to step in and help. He called the bank to figure out what was going on, tried to get a sense of her accounts. He tried to organize things before they got worse, and he couldn't get anywhere. They wouldn't speak with him. And a few months later, things had progressed. Now there were concerns about her being at home safely. Long-term care was being discussed, and they were trying to pull together financial information for the application while also figuring out what to do next. At that point, everything felt urgent, but they were still stuck in the same place. This is where an enduring power of attorney comes in. And it's important to be clear about what it actually does. So there's two parts to this. One is financial and legal. That's what allows some to deal with banks, taxes, income information, government agencies, and all of the things that systems require before anything moves forward. Without that, even close family members can be blocked. The other part is personal care and decision making, and this is where things are a little less straightforward than people expect. This isn't just about stepping in and making decisions. It's often about helping someone understand what's happening, what their options are, and supporting them to take part in decisions, even when that's becoming more difficult. In New Brunswick, there has been a shift towards keeping people involved in their decisions for as long as possible. On paper, that makes sense. In practice, it can be complicated. You might be sitting with someone who says, "I want to stay in my home," but they may not be able to follow what staying at home would actually require, or what supports are needed, or what the risks actually are. So now the family is trying to hold both of these things at once. Respect for what that person is saying while also dealing with what's actually happening. There isn't always a clean answer. I've sat with families where one person is holding on to what was said years ago and another is looking at what's happening right now. And they're both trying to do the right thing. If there isn't a power of attorney in place and things reach a point where someone can't manage on their own, families may need to go through the court system here in New Brunswick to be formally appointed to act on that person's behalf. That can involve legal applications, court processes, and sometimes the involvement from public trustee. It takes time, costs money, and it usually happens when decisions are already pressing. A lot of people assume that if something happens, it'll just fall to my spouse or to our children, and sometimes that works informally, but usually only for a while. When it comes to banks, government systems, and legal authority, that assumption tends to fall apart. There's also another side to this that comes up in conversations. Some people don't want to set this up. They don't want someone else stepping in. They don't want to lose control. And that's really understandable because the point where this becomes relevant is often tied to loss of independence, loss of clarity, changes that people don't always get time to process. But what I see over and over again is that not having anything in place doesn't avoid those situations, tends to make them harder to manage. And it shifts a lot of the weight onto the people around you. For caregivers, that can mean trying to make decisions without clear direction or trying to move things forward without the authority to do so, and then carrying the uncertainty of whether they got it right at all. There's usually no clean pause where people get to sit with what's happening. Things change, and at the same time, decisions need to be made. Applications need to be completed, and living arrangements need to be figured out. Safety becomes a primary concern. And all of this is happening while people are still catching up to the reality of the situation. So when we talk about planning ahead, this isn't about paperwork. It's about making things more workable later on. An enduring power of attorney allows someone to act. But just as important, it's about being clear who that person is and giving them some sense of how you think, what matters to you, what would you want, what wouldn't you want. Because these situations, when they unfold, people aren't working from a script. They're working from what they know, what they've heard, and what they're trying to piece together under pressure. Thanks so much for your time. Take care, and we'll talk again soon. Cheers.